Here's a sentence I hear constantly: I just want things to go back to normal. I understand that sentence. I've said it myself, but I think it might be one of the most limiting sentences a person can say after something breaks them, because normal was the bowl before the crack. The crack already happened. You don't get to go back to the bowl that never broke. That bowl is gone. What you get to decide is what fills the crack. Hey, I'm Dan Herring. Every single week I'm going to drop a new video about philosophy, psychology, faith, things that change the way I live life. If this helps me become a better man, husband, dad, human being, consider following. Let's get back to it. All right. So, today I want to talk to you about a bowl. Not just any bowl, a tea bowl from Japan. It was more than 500 years old. In the late 1400s, it belonged to a shogun. That's the military ruler of Japan. A man named Ashikaga Yoshimasa. He loved this bowl. He used it for tea ceremonies. It was prized above almost anything else he owned. And one day it cracked. He was devastated. He sent it to China. He sent it to the finest craftsmen he could find, and he asked them to repair it. Weeks later, waiting, it came back. Fixed, but fixed with ugly metal staples drilled straight through the porcelain, holding the pieces together like a stitched up wound. And it worked. The bowl held water again, but it was ruined, scarred. Something beautiful had become something the shogun could barely look at now. So he turned to his own craftsmen in Japan and asked a different question. He said, not how do we fix this, but how do we make the crack beautiful? And what they invented next became one of the most famous art forms in Japan in history, and still to today. They mixed lacquer with powdered gold, and instead of hiding the crack, they filled it. They traced every fracture, every line in gold. And they let that break become visible. Let it catch the light. They called it Kintsugi, which is a Japanese word for golden joinery. And here's the part that stopped me the first time I heard this story. It's valued because of it. In Japan, a bowl repaired this way is often considered more valuable, more beautiful, more worth owning than it was the day it left the kiln. Whole, perfect, untouched. I think that is one of the most important ideas you'll never learn in school, not because of pottery, because of you. Every person in this room is carrying at least one crack. A marriage that broke, a business that failed, a diagnosis nobody saw, a relapse, a layoff, a year you didn't like to talk about, a faith you used to have without question that now feels cracked down the middle, a body that used to just work and now it reminds you every morning that it doesn't want to. Something shattered and had to be put together. And here's what I've noticed. Most of us respond to our cracks exactly the way the first repair did. We fix the function, hide the fracture, we staple it, and we go back to work 3 days after the funeral because that's what's expected. We smile in the family photo the month after the marriage quietly ended. We say, I'm fine, so many times we start to believe it, but the staples are actually healing. We get the crack to hold water again, and we call that healed. But holding water is not the same thing as being whole. And I think a lot of us are walking around functional, stapled, and secretly ashamed of the exact thing that could make us the most valuable people in this room. The masters who created Kintsugi worked from 3 beliefs, and I want to walk through each one really quickly. I think they apply to much more than just pottery. The first belief is that the break is part of the object's history, not an interruption of it. They didn't consider the bowl like before the good bowl and then damaged after. They consider it one continuous object. The crack was simply the next chapter of its life, something that happened to the bowl, not something that ended the bowl. I think about people who talk about their life in 2 parts, before the divorce and after, before the diagnosis, as if the story stopped and it's now a different story, a lesser story started. It's not true. Kintsugi says otherwise. The crack isn't where your story ended, it's just where it turned the page. Second belief, how you repair something matters as much as whether you decide to repair it. They could have just glued it, function restored, story over. Instead, they treated the repair itself as sacred, worth doing slowly, worth doing with the finest material they had, gold. Most of us repair ourselves with whatever's cheapest and fastest. We numb instead of feel. We distract instead of process. We replace one relationship with the next one before we've asked a single honest question about what went wrong in the last one. We use emotional equivalent, right, of like gas station glue and wonder why the crack reopens 2 years later in maybe a slightly different shape. The third belief, I think the most important one, use gold, not just glue. Make the repair visible. Don't hide it. That's where I think most of us get it backwards. I got it backwards. We think healing means erasing the evidence, getting back to normal, making it look like nothing ever happened. But normal is the bowl before the crack. You're not that bowl anymore. You can't glue yourself back into a person who's never been broken. That person does not exist anymore. And chasing them is a waste of your one life. Think about how we actually treat cracks every day. Not in Japan, 500 years ago. Here, now. We post the wedding picture. We don't post the year we almost left. We post the promotion. We don't post the 18 months we felt like a failure every single morning before that promotion happened. We post the after photo, never the 4 a.m. in between when nobody was watching, when it could have been way easier to quit. We've built an entire culture around the metal staples. Function restored, crack hidden, smile for the camera. And I understand why. Showing the crack feels like weakness. It feels like handing someone a weapon they can use against you. But what nobody out here is telling you is only ever showing people the unbroken bowl, they won't show you theirs. If everyone around you only shows, oh, it's fixed, it's hidden, you start to believe you're the only one who's ever cracked. That everyone else got a smoother bowl than you did. That you're behind, broken, disqualified, while everyone else is still whole. And that belief is a lie built entirely out of what people are willing to hide. Here's a sentence I hear constantly. In most calls I run, men and women both, I just want things to go back to normal. I understand that sentence. I've said it myself, but I think it might be one of the most limiting sentences a person can say after something breaks them, because normal was the bowl before the crack. The crack already happened. You don't get to go back to the bowl that never broke. That bowl is gone. What you get to decide is what fills the crack. Glue, so the whole thing gets hidden and eventually reopens? Or gold, so the break becomes the most valuable part of the object? Here's something else I've noticed. Not everyone who cracks ends up gold. Some people crack and turn that break into a weapon. They use their pain as an excuse, as a reason to hurt people back, as permission to stay bitter, to stay guarded, to stay hard, because look what happened to me. I understand why. Pain looks for someone to blame. Anger feels like strength when you're scared. But bitterness isn't gold. It's just a crack, except now it's sharp and it cuts anyone who gets close. Gold also isn't pretending the break didn't hurt. Gold is what happens when you let the break make you more gentle instead of more guarded, more honest instead of more defensive, more useful to other broken people instead of more afraid of them. Same crack, two totally different repairs. And only one of them creates something beautiful. I also want to be honest about something. Gold doesn't go on right away. If you've ever actually watched this craft done, the crack isn't filled the same day it happens. The pieces are set, they're cared for, they're given time. Then slowly, layer by layer, the lacquer and the gold go on, sometimes over weeks, because rushing it can ruin the seam. And I say that because some of you are 3 weeks out from something that broke you, and you're frustrated it isn't gold yet. It's not supposed to be gold. Not yet. Gold is what the crack becomes after it's been tended to, not what it becomes the moment it happens. Give yours the time the craftsman gave the bowl. Just don't stop at the staples because that gold is going to take longer. And there's a question underneath all this I think matters more than people realize. Who gets to see the gold? Not everyone. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. You don't hand a 2,000-year-old tea bowl to just anyone in the room to hold, right? But somebody, at least one person who's earned the right to see where you were broken and how you were repaired, a spouse, a close friend, a sponsor, a therapist, this group maybe. The bowl that never leaves the display case, that no one is ever allowed to actually hold, that bowl doesn't get to matter to anyone. It just gets to be looked at. And I'll say this plainly because it's part of why we do these calls. A group like this only works if it's a room where gold is allowed to show. Not everywhere, not with everyone, but here. If every one of us walks in here every week with our staples on, showing each other only the smooth, unbroken, we'll have a room full of people who all secretly think that they're the only one who's cracked. That's not community. That's just a shared performance. The whole value of a group like this is that it can be one of the few places the gold is actually welcomed. So what does gold look like outside of the pottery workshop, outside of this analogy? It looks like a man who went through bankruptcy, and instead of hiding it from his son, he tells him about it. Tells him about it honestly. And when his son loses his own job, and that conversation becomes the reason his son didn't spiral the way he did. It looks like the woman who survived an abusive marriage, instead of pretending it never happened, becomes the person her friends can call at 11 p.m. when they're in one of their own, because she's the only one in the group who actually knows the way out. It looks like the couple who didn't hide the year they nearly divorced. They talk about it openly to their kids. And their marriage isn't in spite of that year, it's built partially out of it. That year is the gold in the seams now, not the secret buried under the floorboards. It's the parent who tells their teenager, I failed doing that too. I got fired once too. I did that too. I know exactly how that feels. And here's what I wish someone had told me. Instead of pretending they've just always had it together. None of them are valuable despite their crack. They're valuable partially because of it. Because the crack is where compassion comes from, where credibility came from, where depth came from. Nobody trusts a person who's never been broken to understand what breaking feels like. Think about the people who've actually helped you through something hard. Was it a person who had it all figured out, who never struggled with what you were, they just lived it, who gave advice from a life that looked nothing like the one you were living? Or was it someone who'd been exactly where you were? Who could say, I know, and actually mean it because they'd stood in the same wreckage you were standing in? My money would be guessing and betting it would be on the second one. That person's credibility with you didn't come from their unbroken bowl. It came from the gold. From the fact that they didn't hide the year it happened to them. They let you see it. And that's exactly what made you trust them enough to listen. That bowl that I told you about, the Shogun's Tea Bowl, it still exists. It's real. You can go see it today. It sits in a museum alongside dozens of other bowls from that same era. Those dozens of other bowls were never dropped, never cracked, smooth, untouched. And what's crazy is it's not those bowls that draw the crowd. People don't go to that museum to see the bowls that weren't cracked. People travel across the world to stand in front of the one with the gold seams running through it. Nobody gathers around a bowl to admire it that was never broken. They gather around the one that was and didn't hide it. I think that is true about every single one of your lives as well. Nobody is going to remember you for the years nothing went wrong. They're going to remember you for what you did with the year everything did. So here's what I want you to sit with this week. Not what's broken in me. You already know the answer to that one. But this, is it stapled shut or is it filled with gold? Are you hiding the crack or have you actually let it become part of your story? Visible, honest, useful to somebody who else is standing in pieces right now. You don't have to fix everything this week. You just have to stop hiding the one crack you already know about. Trade those staples for gold. Hey, if this conversation made you think, I'd love to have you back next week. Drop a comment, let me know what you think, subscribe so you don't miss it, and send this to somebody. See you next week.